I feel like I discovered something about myself today.
Oh, really?
Well, it's not a new discovery, but so I'm what I would consider to be an anxious peer.
What do you mean by that?
Meaning, when I go to the bathroom.
Oh, a nervous peer.
Right.
Oh, I see. I thought you said an anxious peer.
I said anxious peer.
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 Like, no, like a coworker. Like an anxious peer. And I'm like, what does that mean? No, I am also a nervous peer.
Like someone. Okay, so basically, if I go into a public restroom with multiple stalls, I can't pee until someone else has started to pee or the sink's running, if there's another person in there.
I can be like that. It's very dependent on the circumstances. Like somewhere like work, I can do it fine just because I'm comfortable in that bathroom. But definitely I've had instances where I'm in a public bathroom and I need some sort of sound or headphones in to pee.
No, because the worst is when you enter a bathroom and there's either someone in there already, or just one person. It's fine if there's multiple people. I can pee if there's multiple people because there's always sound.
Yes.
Let's say you walk in and someone walks in right behind you. Sometimes I just want to go to the sink and pretend I'm just washing my hands and leave.
I had that. So you've been to my apartment, Hannah.
Yes.
It's very small and noise travels and there's no fan. This was not recently, but I may have had someone over and I like literally couldn't pee because I was like, there's no noise, and I just like got so anxious that I just didn't pee. I just left and I was just like, all right, I'll try again later.
Did you just like try to run the sink?
Oh, I thought about doing that, but I just like gave it a little time and then I went back and then I was able to pee. Sometimes I have to read things. Like I'll read bottles of shampoo. Like if I read something, I'm distracted enough to start peeing.
Mine's just performance anxiety. Because what happens is you're both just waiting for the other person to start peeing. It's almost like a silent standoff where you won't say that you're waiting, but you're both waiting for the other person to start. And I physically cannot pee. Like I've tried.
I understand. No, I could push as hard as possible and nothing comes out. I understand.
But yeah, so that was a discovery that I've made again in life, specifically because someone followed me directly into the bathroom today, and I went to the sink and pretended I just had to wash my hands and left, and then I had to pee for the next hour, and I just had to live with it.
Welcome to Research, Rank, and Repeat.
This is Hannah.
This is Alyssa.
And we're going to jump right back into Pixar discussion and continue on with the next set of movies. We're now coming to Toy Story 3.
Toy Story 3.
It was 2010.
And Toy Story 3 was rated G and it had a runtime of 1 hour and 43 minutes.
It's box office worldwide. This was the first Pixar movie that went over $1 billion.
I am not surprised.
It was $1.6 billion, which obviously if you look at just how crazy the Toy Story numbers are, it just shows how good of an idea to have Toy Story be the first.
So, Toy Story 3 has a 98% Rotten Tomatoes and 92 out of 100 on Metacritic and an A Cinema Score rating. Toy Story 3 also was nominated and won Best Animated Feature, and it was also the second Pixar movie nominated for Best Picture.
Okay.
Up and Toy Story 3 are still the only Pixar movies that have been nominated for the Oscar for Best Movie.
Okay. So, summary. Come back to the toy box in this heartwarming and hilarious movie. As Andy goes to college, Woody, Buzz, and the toys wonder what will become of them. But when they land at Sunnyside Daycare, they discover a new adventure is just beginning. All these descriptions I'm getting are from Disney Plus's website.
Oh boy.
First thing I wanted to say, they have a opening scene. It's basically like a Western. They're on a train chase. And I just pointed out that Death by Monkeys is how I'd want to go out.
It would be pretty great.
That was my main takeaway. Before we get into Toy Story, we forgot to mention that John Ratzenberger was the construction worker in Up. He played one of the construction workers.
Yes.
And obviously in Toy Story 3 he plays Ham again.
That's right, we forgot about him, his role.
I have a lot of thoughts about Toy Story 3.
I do as well. So, the first thought that I had about this movie is I found it so weird that they were able to make the characters look so plasticky, but also, like, you could clearly see the increases in animation and in how much better everything looked. Mm-hmm. But they still looked like their character models from the first two movies.
Yeah. We lost Wheezy the Penguin.
I know. Sold. We also lost Bo Peep for some reason.
Her character was
she'll get her time.
She will, but whatever.
Someday.
I have a lot.
In the not so distant past.
I actually, now that I'm looking at this, I did not write a lot of notes about this movie.
I don't know how to feel about some of this stuff. The first bit of the movie feels so depressing because it's like the whole home video
when they're showing the montage,
playing "You Got a Friend in Me," and the fact that it's been 15 years since the first movie, so everyone who watched it as a kid is now growing up and going to college, and it's just
the fact that Andy's going away to college and getting rid of his childhood toys and stuff. That's something that everyone can relate to, even if you haven't gone to college. It's like moving out of a house or things like that. Like, it did feel very the end of a era, like, so to speak.
Right. And there's this part where Woody's looking at his board of stuff and he lifts up the sheet and it shows that picture.
Yeah.
And it just starts playing the leitmotif for Woody, and it just is so, like, nostalgic. We were talking, this is the only movie we've watched together.
Yeah, we did watch this together.
And we were talking about how his mom was making him literally pack up his entire room.
She was like, it either goes to the trash, it gets donated, or goes in the attic. And I'm like, are you turning his room into a gym? Like, what is happening?
Yeah,
he's gonna come back from college at some point, I would imagine, for break.
If he's 17 and just starting college, is he not coming home for holidays? Is he not coming back during the summer?
Yeah, I didn't really understand that.
And also, I think it's pretty interesting that they have him taking Woody to college.
Yeah, I was surprised.
I was surprised that
he puts Woody in the box to take to college. And it's more so probably that he'll just keep it. I took a blanket, one of my
I took a blanket as well, but that I feel like that's different than like.
But I also didn't like have it out. But I was surprised they were gonna have him take it.
Right.
Obviously, he doesn't end up taking Woody to college with him
in the end.
In the end, but I was surprised that they had him. I feel like though Andy always does go to Woody for comfort. Yeah, like that's like his first toy, like the toy that obviously was really important to him.
And he says something at the end of the movie, it's like, Woody's always there for you.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty
so telling. I do like that they kind of call to that. Right. What I will say about Toy Story 3 is I felt at times in the middle, I was just kind of, I couldn't fully pay attention. I don't know what it was. I just felt like maybe there were too many new toys introduced. I'm not really sure what it was, but I just felt like some of the old characters got lost in the mix, and I was just sort of...
So, one thing I noticed is, I don't know why specifically this stood out to me, but the animation when they're in the trash bag and they're trying to get out and the plastic's moving, it looked so good.
Yeah.
Also, in case you weren't aware, the garbage man is Sid.
Yes, yeah.
He collects the garbage, and if you do not know, Sid is voiced by Eric Von Deeten.
Oh, really?
Who you may know as Josh Bryant, who goes to Grove High School.
From Princess Diaries.
And also on Pups and Suds from Brink.
Okay. I was not aware of that.
Yes, he plays Sid in both movies, Toy Story and Toy Story 3.
I will say the last 20 minutes of the movie are really well done again.
Yeah.
Specifically the last scene, which... Like, we both cried last night watching it.
We both cried.
There's so much nostalgia. I think it's a mix of Toy Story being the first movie. We used to watch it all the time as kids, so it was kind of... I know they made a Toy Story 4, but it was sort of the end of that world of Toy Story.
Right.
Mixed with the fact that it's just, like, emotional. Like, when you've moved on, when you've gone away, and things change...
I think because everybody has stuffed animals or stuffed animal that they care about.
I mean, I still have some that I
know for you, probably Cupcake.
Yeah, I had a little stuffed puppy.
And mine is an Eeyore doll I got when I was like 2.
Yeah, and it's you just feel that emotion. And it's also like Andy Except he gives away Woody. Like,
Right.
he's able to part with him. He understands that they're going to a child who will use them instead of just being stuck up in the attic.
Right.
So it's definitely, like, an emotional ending. I think the movie is actually really defined by the ending, I would say.
I say the last, once they leave the daycare, I think that's really what, thinking about the movie, that's really what
I think I got lost a little bit in the daycare.
During the daycare, I liked that they were able to do more slapstick style humor because they could animate that better. They have some good... I love Ken and Barbie.
Yeah.
I think I love that dynamic. I like that we get a reprogrammed Buzz, you know, Spanish Buzz,
Right.
I think is pretty great. And she's like, stop, temptress.
Oh, yeah.
Bewitching, you and your bewitching...
Spare me your lies, temptress.
Yeah, you and your bewitching good
Yeah.
looks. And also, I think the part I like the best with the daycare is the heist. The fact that you've got this elaborate heist, and it's like Woody...
It's sort of like a prison break.
Woody is a great planner. He comes up with great plans, he figures things out, and Buzz is great at performing, like, feats. Their dynamic works really well together, and I really actually liked, like, the Buzz-Jessie subplot line.
Yeah, which I've never really been a huge fan of Jessie.
Yeah.
As a character.
She's fine.
But I do like that. I like that Woody's loyalty really comes out in this movie.
Yes.
He, like, literally gives up going to college with Andy so he can stay with the other toys.
And also, they don't trust him again.
No, they always never trust
They
Woody.
never trust him. I mean, except
Yeah.
for the first movie, he was an asshole. Like, he was right every
Yeah.
other time. At this point that we're recording, we have not watched Toy Story 4.
No, we've never seen it.
We've never seen it. Neither of us have seen Toy Story 4.
And I don't really know anything about the movie itself.
I only know that it has Bo Peep in it.
Right.
That's about all I know about the movie. I don't know how it ends, but I have a hard time understanding how they can top that.
Yeah, we were talking last night a little bit. We tried to say most of this stuff for the podcast, but we were just saying how it's such a perfect ending that you almost wonder why they made a fourth one, just because it felt so wrapped up. Like, it felt like the perfect ending to a really good franchise.
I was going to say, it feels complete. Storybook ending, as, you know, with the toys.
Right.
You know, it starts off with them being Andy's toys, and it goes on to someone else. They transfer over to someone deserving.
It's like the end of an era, but like a new cycle, a new beginning.
Right. Yeah, so there's a lot. There's a lot of emotion attached to this movie.
Do you have anything else?
At this point, that's the most I've cried watching a movie.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
I think it's just the wrapping up, too. Like, at that point, we thought that was the end of Toy Story.
Right.
They didn't announce the plans to make a fourth one, I don't think, until a couple years after that one came out.
Toy Story 4 was in development for a really long time.
So, yeah, but I would have to say for this one, my favorite character was Woody.
I said Woody as well.
He just, his loyalty really shows. He's basically giving up his chance to go away to college with Andy to stay with the toys who
and to support his friends and to be there for his friends and protect them.
Yeah, so I would say it was Woody. I think my favorite line was actually a Barbie line.
I loved.
It says, authority should derive from consent of the governed, not from the threat of force.
Yeah.
Like, it just felt like a line you wouldn't expect Barbie to say.
I kind of had a scene and quote kind of went together. I think the part where Andy's giving Bonnie the toys and playing with her and having one last time. And when he goes to walk away and then, like, Woody's like, so long, partner.
Oh, yeah.
And it's...
Oh, God, I'm getting emotional again.
I like, could you hear the
I
choke?
did. You choked a little.
I choked just thinking about him saying it because I was crying while I was watching it. It's just like the culmination of everything. It's just Woody saying goodbye and Andy getting closure.
And they both accepted what's gonna happen and like that. So it definitely is.
I just thought of something I wanted to bring up.
Okay.
So, Pixar for a long time didn't want to do sequels.
Right.
They eventually started doing sequels, and a lot of classic movies ended up getting sequels, from Toy Story to Cars. Mm-hmm. Every movie in that chunk from 1985 to 2006 got a sequel.
Oh, Bug's Life.
With the exception of A Bug's Life. That's the only movie that didn't get a sequel.
Right.
And I'm curious if it's because they just didn't have a story, or if they just didn't think it would market well, because Bug's Life did well in the box office. I know it generally is not regarded as like one of the classics of Pixar.
Right.
But I'm curious why that was...
Why it was the one that didn't.
Why it's the only one
Yeah.
so far that hasn't gotten a sequel.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting.
Now it's time for Cars 2. How excited are you for this?
I'm so excited. I
Cars...
haven't been able to sleep.
Cars 2 was released in 2011, has a rating of G, and a runtime of 1 hour and 46 minutes.
Box office, $559 million.
How?
I don't know.
So, Cars 2 had a Metacritic score... Oh, I forgot about Rotten Tomatoes. Should do that first, because it's worse. Cars 2 had a Rotten Tomatoes score of 39%. It's the lowest score so far.
Mm-hmm.
And a Metacritic score of 57 out of 100. And somehow a cinema score of A-.
Yeah, I don't get that.
I'm not sure how that happened.
We're gonna have to email the people over at CinemaScore.
So where do we even start? Oh, actually, I got something. So I actually fell asleep. I fell asleep watching Cars 2 for about 5 minutes near the end. So I gotta be honest, there's a chunk of the movie I don't remember because I fell asleep.
Yeah, my first thought is how much money they had to pay Michael Caine to agree to be in this movie.
This is what my first note said. Oh boy, I'm definitely not ready for this. A White Claw and ice cream at the ready. It's necessary.
You know what I realized? I was so excited to get into this movie, I forgot about the description.
Oh my god, we did.
Okay.
You gotta give us a description.
Let's circle back. When Lightning McQueen and his breast...
If he's got breasts, then I'm concerned.
Oh god.
What?
Let me try that. Let's try it one more time.
Oh my god.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, it's a good way to start.
Okay. Thank you. I can't. I can't do it.
So ridiculous. Now I'm just picturing it. Oh, that's a good one. Maybe like something about Cars too.
Yeah, okay. When Lightning McQueen and his best friend Mater compete in the World Grand Prix, the road is filled with hilarious surprises, especially when Mater gets caught up in the adventure of international espionage.
Michael Caine.
Michael Caine.
AKA Nigel Powers.
AKA...
And you know that he hates people who are intolerant of other people's cultures. And the Dutch.
And the Dutch.
Did you hear them say the word boondaba?
Yes.
And was your first thought he exclaimed with great relish?
Yes,
Okay.
it was. We're just gonna quickly go through this movie because
most of my notes are like, I don't care about any of this.
Yeah.
This song sucks. Why is this important?
I did make a list because I was very bored
Okay.
of all the spy movies that are better than Cars 2. So we got
Okay.
Agent Cody Banks,
I would agree.
Get Smart,
Yes.
Spy Kids,
Of course.
Spy Kids 2,
Yes.
and the horrific Spy Kids 3 in 3D.
You know, we saw that in theaters.
Yes, we did.
I would rather watch that because
Yes.
at least we get Elijah Wood.
It's true.
He's pretty great.
The character I liked most from the first movie died, and they just really took 5 seconds to gloss over that death.
Well, I assume it's because Paul Newman died.
Right.
Is why he wasn't mentioned. And we'll get to in Cars 3, but he actually is talked about a lot in Cars 3.
Yeah.
Which is what they should have done. But again, this story was not based on Radiator Springs. And somehow some of the characters got important roles in this movie.
Okay, because of all the side characters in any of the Pixar movies I've seen, Mater is the bottom person on my list of movies I would most like to see a movie about.
But in rewatching, here's what I've noticed. Every single Pixar sequel, for the most part, gives the focus to the second main character. Because you get Monsters University, which is more about Mike Wazowski.
Mm-hmm.
You get Finding Dory, clearly about Dory. You've got Cars 2, which is somehow they decided would be a good idea to focus on Mater.
Okay, if you're gonna do that, then give it to Bonnie Hunt.
Right. I'd like a story about Sally.
She was a lawyer.
Yeah.
It could be
That'd
like
be nice.
It could be like a nice law school, like her Legally Blonde days.
Oh, yes.
Her pre-days.
That would be great. I don't know why we needed the first, the scene where they're like, it's Michael Caine and we just watch a car get murdered by the car mob.
Yeah.
I was like, what is this? There was murder and torture.
Yeah.
I said in a G-rated movie is a yikes for me.
The movie was boring.
It was, I mean, I fell asleep,
It was confusing.
The part that disturbed me the most was where Mater had an accident.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what is this? Why am I watching Mater leak oil, the equivalent of peeing himself,
It was
on stage? And I'm like, what?
There was a lot of just really weird subject matter.
A lot of weird stuff. It didn't make a lot of sense. I didn't care about either the race and the biofuel and Mater's subplot with I don't even remember her name. The one car who's his love interest.
The jokes really fell flat.
It was not funny.
No.
I don't think I laughed a single time.
I laughed once, and I don't even think it was that funny of a moment. It was just more me looking for something to laugh about.
I also want to mention about how I think this movie has a bad message.
Yeah.
Because in the end, Lightning's like, you shouldn't be yourself because, you're offensive and, you come across as hillbilly,
Right.
Lack of a better word. And in the end, it's like, he's like, no, you need to be yourself. Be who you are. And Mater, well, for one, he's shown to be very culturally insensitive in a different country. He's also offensive and he's rude in this movie.
Yep.
Why are we suggesting that children should be themselves with no filters? Because there's nothing wrong with having your personality and being who you are, but you can't just do whatever you want.
And there's nothing wrong with going to another country and not necessarily fitting in, but there's a way you need to respect the culture and the place where you're at.
Exactly.
And I just Lightning McQueen is literally the worst character. He still hasn't... They made us believe in the last Cars movie that somehow in the last 10 minutes he changed completely as a person. We start Cars 2 and he's the same exact douchebag.
Yeah, I was glad I got less of him because I was just like, well, I hate Mater more than I like Lightning McQueen, but it's just all around, I can't believe Pixar put this out.
No, I can't either.
Based on everything else they've put out up to this point, it's honestly... I don't know what happened. I don't know if they were just made this because they wanted to sell more Cars merchandise or they thought people liked Mater enough for him to have his own movie. I'm not sure what happened.
There's very few things that the movie actually does well.
So, I guess technically there's a chase scene. There's many chase scenes in this movie.
Yeah.
So, adds on to that, I guess.
John Ratzenberger plays Mac the truck again. He's got a brief role. Honestly, I think that's all I want to say. We can just get into... Unless you have anything else.
I don't have anything in my notes.
So instead of doing our favorites, because we had no favorites, we are going to do the worst character and the worst scene or quote. To me, the worst character, I just think Lightning McQueen. Even though Mater sucks in this movie, I just hate Lightning McQueen.
I picked Mater because everything he did, I didn't find a redeeming quality in him in the entire movie.
For a worst scene or quote, I wanted to say every single one. The quote to me that summed up how just horrible the jokes were in this movie was Mater saying, McQueen meet the Queen, Queen meet McQueen. And I literally just sat there and I was like, yeah, this is what this movie is.
Yeah, I couldn't pick a quote. There's so many things wrong with it, and my least favorite scene was the one where he has an accident.
Yeah.
Because I was in disbelief that this was a scene I was watching, and then him going to the bathroom saying, like, I never leak, and I'm just like, what is happening? I'm like, why is this a scene that we need to watch?
All right, well, let's move on.
All right, good, we're done. All right, on to Better Pastures.
So now we got Brave, which was 2012.
So Brave was rated PG. It had a runtime of 1 hour and 34 minutes.
Okay. $538 million in the box office.
So it made less money than Cars 2?
Yes.
Oh, that's upsetting. So Brave has a Rotten Tomatoes score of 78%, a Metacritic score of 69 out of 100, and a Cinema score of A.
Mm-hmm. Determined to carve her own path in life, Merida defines an age-old custom sacred to the unruly and uproarious Lord of the Lands. When her actions inadvertently unleash chaos in the kingdom... I said kingdom a little bit weird there.
I didn't hear anything wrong.
Whatever.
You didn't say breast.
Okay, now this is ruined. Merida must harness all of her skills to undo a beastly curse before it's too late and discover the true meaning of bravery.
So, the first thing I want to say before we get into first thoughts, how did it take... I'm trying to see how many years Pixar had been running up to this point. So 95 to 2005 is 10 years. 17. How did it take 17 years for there to be a female lead?
Okay. My favorite note is when we were discussing lead female characters, I completely forgot about Brave.
Yeah.
But, yeah, this is the first time. I mean, Incredibles, she wasn't the main character.
I was going to say Mrs. Incredibles is a main character, but she is not the lead.
She's not the lead.
Mr. Incredible's the lead. How did it take 17 years to get to this point?
So, just before we get into the actual movie, I found some really interesting background stuff on this movie.
Okay.
So, Brenda Chapman, she directed Prince of Egypt.
Oh, that's a good movie.
Yeah. She became Pixar's first female director of a feature-length film. However, during the filming, she was replaced as director after creative disagreements.
Of course.
Which I thought is a shame because having a female-based main character and then your female director getting axed in the middle. Also, Reese Witherspoon was supposed to play Merida.
What?
Yeah. So she was cast to play Merida.
Oh my god.
She was they were filming, and she couldn't get the Scottish accent down.
I'm trying to imagine a movie where Reese Witherspoon plays a Scottish child, and that's...
Well, she gave an interview later on and said the reason... They originally said that she had another movie came up.
Yeah.
She said the reason that she ended up leaving was because she couldn't get the accent down and she didn't want it to
She didn't want to be like Dick Van Dyke and Mary Poppins giving a terrible like Cockney English accent.
So she was replaced by Kelly MacDonald, who is actually Scottish.
Which is rightfully the right way to go about that, I think.
Also, Steve Jobs died the year this movie came out. They did a little tribute. I was going to say,
they did do a little tribute at the end of the movie.
And Merida is the first Disney princess created by Pixar.
Yes.
Also, half of this cast is literally Harry Potter.
I noticed that.
Harry Potter.
I noticed that.
So you've got Emma Thompson,
who plays her mother, Eleanor,
and she plays Professor
Trelawney,
the
astrology teacher.
Then you got Julie Walters, who is Mrs. Weasley.
Right.
You've got Robbie Coltrane,
who plays
Hagrid. And then Patrick Doyle, he did some side character work for Brave. He scored Goblet of Fire.
Okay.
Harry Potter.
Interesting.
So a lot of people from the Harry Potter. And then just to put this here, John Ratzenberger plays a guard named Gordon in the movie.
He's got a very brief role in this movie.
Very short.
So my first thought about Brave is we watched this movie together. Mm-hmm. I've only seen it once, and it was probably when we were in high school.
It was a while ago.
Or maybe early college, because it would have been, if it was 2012, then that was when I was either a junior or senior in high school.
It was definitely a while ago, and I'll be honest, I did not enjoy it.
I was going to say, I remember you not liking it, and what I wrote was my first note is that what I did remember about it is that I liked the music. I remember liking the music, and oh, you know what? I'm an idiot. I literally wrote in my notes, took 17 years to get a female protagonist, and I struggled for 5 minutes to do that. I was thinking ahead.
Yeah, the first thing I noticed was, like, the scenic scenes they had at the beginning.
Yeah.
And Pixar actually completely rewrote their animation system for this film.
For the hair.
Yeah. And also to do, like, some of the scenery stuff. So it was the first time in 25 years they had rewrote their animation system.
I noticed that it seemed like it had either different or been upgraded. I noticed. I also thought it was interesting that when Brave came out, bow and arrows were in. Because you've got, like, Hunger Games, you've got Arrow, I think was starting around that time.
I know Lord of the Rings was earlier, but...
So I thought that was interesting that she was, like, a bow and arrow heroine figure as well.
Yeah, so this movie, like, I finished the movie and I was like, is it over? It felt really short.
Yeah. I didn't feel satisfied.
No, okay, to me, what I really liked about this movie is the focus on the female characters and the mother-daughter
relationship is the real strength of this movie.
And you pick up on it quickly. There's a lot of signs about it that clearly she prefers her dad. She's like her dad's girl.
Dad's girl.
Daddy's girl.
Did you not want to say the word
No,
daddy?
I forgot what it was called.
I was going to say, I really like, because I don't remember liking her mom so much, but I really liked how they portrayed her mom as being very strong and independent. She can carry a room, and, you know, she's clearly in charge, even though, like, her husband is, I'm assuming, a king or, I don't know, ruler of their clan. Yeah. But she's the one who's doing the work.
Yeah, I enjoyed that aspect. I thought towards the end, it was just very I don't know, too fast paced or just bizarre. Like, it just didn't really make sense to me.
I think the issue I found is that I didn't feel like it was earned.
Yeah.
The way they mended the tapestry and then she's like crying and the sun's coming up and then she's just magically fine, and I was waiting for that, like, you know, Beauty and the Beast transformation where we see her return to human form, and instead it's just, here's your arm. And then it just kind of ended where, like, her and Mom are riding horseback, everything's a-okay, no issues. And
the other thing that it didn't seem believable to me is Merida goes into the room of all the men and gives this really short speech about how, like, she should be able to have her own traditions. I was like, that would not have changed all those, like, 100-year-old traditions.
Especially also because this takes place clearly a very long time ago.
The one thing I did like, going back to the relationship between the mom and daughter, is early on, Merida's always, like, upset because her mom won't listen to her.
And she won't listen to her mom.
Yeah, and the mom gets turned into a bear. She literally cannot speak to her. She has no choice but to listen.
Right, she has to listen to her, and she has to find a way to express herself that Merida can understand in bear form. Yeah. And I liked that they gave the bear human-esque qualities, like her walking on two legs, you know, and daintily putting on her crown.
Yeah.
One thing I'll say is I really liked that they made her go feral sometimes. Yeah. That feral animal state, I really liked that because it, like, gave a different dynamic to their relationship.
Yeah. So to me, part of the problem with this movie was not having strong side characters.
The brothers, I could do without all the butts.
Did you notice the scene?
There were too many butts.
No. There was a scene where the maid puts the key between her breasts.
My God.
And the kid literally jumps into
he basically
it. He motorboated her to get the keys.
Yeah, I was like,
I didn't feel great about that.
I didn't either. I know they were supposed to be, like, mischievous little boys, but I don't know. The humor, I think, didn't really work.
No.
A lot in this movie.
To me, there just was... It seemed confusing at times.
I wish this movie would have been better.
Me too.
Pixar still doesn't really do a lot of women-led... It just still feels like they tried this thing with the Disney, like, princess story, and it didn't really seem to stick and work with the audience. I mean, clearly, if it's making less money than Cars 2...
Right.
I wish it could be good. It just didn't all come together.
Because I think there was a lot of potential there. I mean, Merida herself is a pretty strong character.
Right.
And I think her whole message of not wanting to have to, like, marry into or follow tradition and wanting to kind of carve her own path, I think that's a good message. But I just think that the way they executed it, it didn't stick for me.
Yeah, I agree.
I would say my favorite character was Merida.
My favorite was Eleanor, her mother.
Mom, okay.
Yeah, but I went between the two of them.
The favorite scene, actually, so Merida and her mom, towards the beginning of the movie, they're having, like, this parallel conversation where they're both kind of showing that they can't communicate with each other and showing the complexity of their relationship. They're not actually talking to each other. Merida's kind of talking to herself.
She's talking to her horse,
to her horse. Yeah. And then Eleanor's talking to the father.
Pretending to be Merida.
Right. So I think that scene was really interesting to see that, like, parallel, how they are both having the conversation they want to have, but they can't have it actually face to face.
And an extension, that was a scene I considered, and I liked when, you know, she's got the dress on, her mom, like, is trying to say something, but she just can't say it, so she says something else that she, you know, it seems like they maybe will connect, but it didn't work out.
Right.
The scene I picked is, I really liked the scene when she's turned into a bear and they're catching fish. Because I thought that was the first time you really saw them, like, having fun together, enjoying each other's company, and, like, her mom's, you know, getting more into Merida's territory of her being very outdoorsy and free.
It's sort of like their first time really understanding each other.
And I liked, like, the song that went with that. Again, I said this at the beginning, that the one thing I remembered was the music, and I like all the song use in this movie.
Yeah.
And the artist they got is a Scottish artist as well.
I looked it up. They got, like, all Scottish artists to do the singing
woman who
and everything.
does, which I thought was really cool that she got someone who probably isn't, or at the time wasn't well known, got, like, a feature in a Pixar movie.
The quote I really liked, what is the thing? Oh, so Merida's talking about, I believe she's talking about fate, and she says, it's the one thing we search for or fight to change. I really like that. I think it might have been from the beginning when they're introducing, like, showing all the scenery and everything like that.
I think so. I'm pretty sure mine is from pretty early on in the movie, but it's Merida's mom. She says, "Legends are lessons; they ring with truth."
Yeah.
And I liked that. Oh, and the other thing I forgot to mention earlier is there is a chase scene chasing Merida's mom at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
So we get another one of those. Yeah. All right, so now we get into another Pixar sequel, Monsters University, which is rated. What?
Nothing.
Monsters University R? Is that what you said?
Rar.
Oh, RAR.
There's my impression of Sully.
Oh, God. Well, it's rated G.
Can we just start over?
No. Monsters University is rated G. It was released in 2013 and has a runtime of 1 hour and 43 minutes.
It's a box office of $743 million worldwide.
It has a 80% on Rotten Tomatoes, a Metacritic score of 65 out of 100, and a Cinema score of A.
So, for summary, Monsters University. During his first semester at Monsters University, Mike Wazowski's dream of becoming a scarer is derailed when he crosses paths with hotshot James P. Sullivan.
So I actually have a little background about the production of this sequel. So back before Disney bought Pixar, Disney owned the rights to create sequels for Pixar movies. And they had planned a sequel as early as 2005. But then when Disney bought Pixar, that sequel's plans were dissolved. And it had been worked on by this animation company called Circle 7 Animations. And they had actually worked on drafts for Toy Story 3, Monsters University, and Finding Dory. And so they never actually produced anything because they were only open for like a year or two. Mm-hmm. But the film was originally supposed to be about Mike and Sully getting lost in the human world, trying to give Boo a birthday present, and then they would go off and separate and have shenanigans. And I don't know how that would have turned out.
It's interesting, though, that it wouldn't even have been a prequel.
All right, well, that's all I had about the background.
Okay. So my first note is I've seen this movie one time, probably a couple years ago, and I did not remember that John Krasinski was in this movie.
I didn't either.
But I instantly heard someone talking, and I was like, that's John Krasinski.
Something I noticed about this movie is I got kind of taken out of it a little bit because of how many voices I recognized, because Aubrey Plaza's in it. John Krasinski, I was like, oh, that's Jim, immediately.
I also heard Bonnie Hunt right at the beginning, too.
I heard Bonnie Hunt right at the beginning. Yeah, there's a lot in there. My first thought that I wrote down is that I saw this movie in theaters right after I graduated from high school, and I didn't really remember a lot about the movie. The only things I knew is there was like a sad camp scene near the end, and then it was like really frat.
Yeah, I mean, it's Monsters University, but one of the things that I think didn't help the movie was the whole movie was based around game, like, initiation thing.
Yeah, I was gonna say it kind of uses every college frat stereotypical, like, movie, and it just puts it in this universe, and I don't think we needed that, really.
I would agree.
Because there's, like, the hazing, the loser frat, there's the top frat that are all mean, I don't exactly like that they made Sully this frat bro. Ugh, why? Why'd you do this to me?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was an interesting idea, or concept, I should say, for them to look back into how their relationship formed.
Right.
I just think the actual story of it didn't work for me.
Yeah, I think it's a fine movie. Yeah. I don't think there's anything in here that I was like, oh, this sucks, this is terrible.
I feel like I could have definitely been okay without seeing it. Yeah. I do think it added certain dynamic. It helps you understand the relationship between Mike and Sully better, but I also feel like it would have been fine without the prequel. Yeah.
Some of the, gags were funny. There was the monster holding several cups of coffee and the pot going into the exam, and I'm like, I relate to that on a personal level. Although I don't think the soundtrack's amazing, I do think it fits, the college big band kind of feel.
I mean, I did really like the colors and the animation in the movie. Mm-hmm. There's such a variety of it, and what it does is it focuses on the biggest flaws of each character.
Yeah.
So you have Mike with wanting to be the only one in charge and wanting to be not necessarily like the leader, but like the type A person who's in charge of everything. And then you have Sully thinking that he's better than everyone and that his talent will take him where he needs to go.
Yeah, and I do like that the ending of the movie kind of subverted the tropes. Because you've got Mike, who's the hardest worker, but he's not scary. And nothing he does is going to change that. Like, no matter how hard he works, he's never going to be what he wants to be. And then I also like that they get expelled and they're not allowed back in. And they have to just work their way to what they want to do.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, it's not your fairy tale ending. I said it's similar to Ratatouille, where they go with a realistic ending.
Right.
With Mike, not getting, like, a new record, not becoming a scarer, and them both having to kind of work their way up to the positions they were at Monsters, Inc.
So I kind of liked that aspect of the movie, but, again, it's fine.
Yeah. I think part of the problem is I've seen this movie 100 times.
The first original.
No, this concept.
Oh, yes.
no, not the actual
I was gonna say, like, I thought you said you saw it one time.
No. Like, the concept. Basically, the underdogs rising to the top. There's a group of misfits.
In, college especially.
Yeah, like, I've seen that story done in TV shows and movies. I don't think it's a new idea, necessarily.
I can think of 5 movies that fill that void off, like, have that same kind of story off the top of my head.
And so I think they probably could have found a different way to do it if they were going to do a prequel, or maybe not. They shouldn't have done a prequel. I don't know.
Yeah, I just don't think they do anything interesting enough to separate it.
I do like the contrast of, like, how natural ability can only get you so far.
Yeah.
Hard work eventually has to come in, and you do see that. But, I don't know. To me, it's just, like, it's an okay movie. For me, it was easy to watch. But also, I just found myself being like, this is nothing new.
Right. And it also made quite a bit of money at the box office. Like, wasn't it like 700,000?
743 million.
So it obviously did well. Yeah. And it did better than a lot of the movies around this time did. So, I don't know if it's because it's a Monsters, Inc. sequel and people really like Monsters, Inc.
I think sequels have a built-in audience already. Yeah. So that definitely helps. Because, Brave and Good Dinosaur had fewer, but they also were just their own standalone movies. Yeah. I understand. I think people really liked Monsters, Inc. Mm-hmm. I know we both like Monsters, Inc. a lot. Right. The problem to me is it doesn't live up to Monsters, Inc.
I will say I do really like a lot of the callbacks to the original they did in this movie, because the credit sequence is kind of similar in the beginning. They do that slow-mo shot of them walking into the room. They have, at the very end, I noticed he had in his locker a sticky note that said file paperwork. I was looking for it because I'm like, oh, I hope that's in there.
Yeah, and going to that, John Ratzenberger plays the Yeti. Again, he's in it briefly.
Oh, very briefly. Yeah. And there's technically a chase scene at the very end with the police officers.
I don't know. The movie, to me, it just got confusing at times.
Yeah. And I don't think the emotion hit as hard as they wanted it to.
I think certain scenes for me that I felt emotion. I don't know. I missed the characters from the original Monsters, Inc. I don't think they did Sully that well.
I didn't like Sully in this movie.
And, people can change and stuff like that, but to me that's not what I would have pictured Sully like as a person that age.
Yeah, same. Does it speak to the other characters in the frat that we haven't even mentioned any of them, that they're kind of forgettable?
To be honest, I don't, besides like Aubrey Plaza, just from her voice. But
well, I know my favorite of them was the one played by Charlie Day.
Which character was
he was
that?
Kind of looked like an M, like a fuzzy M.
Oh, okay.
He made comments every once in a while that he's like, I'm not going back to prison.
Oh, yeah.
And like, this is my favorite sewer.
Yeah, the side characters were really lacking.
They were fine.
I think they were more just in there for plot filler, which is okay, but I would have liked to see a couple side characters actually be more developed. Right. I don't know. To me, it was an okay movie.
Yeah, it's okay.
I'm ready to move into favorites if you would like to.
Me as well.
Okay. Favorite character for this one is actually Mike.
I agreed.
Which in the last movie, I think we both said Sully.
We both said Sully.
But for me, this was Mike's chance to be the main kind of character. To me, it's like at the end of the day, he wanted something so bad, but you can't just want something to make it happen.
Sometimes you can't happen.
You just don't get it.
Right.
And so he's able to understand that and realize a new dream that he can have.
Right.
So I like that idea.
My favorite quote, I wasn't sure. I had a couple options, but I ended up going with the one where Sully's like, I can't do it. And he's like, stop being a Sullivan and start being you. Because it's like, you don't have to live in your father's legacy. You know, you can be your own person.
Yeah.
Which I think is a good message.
Yeah, the one I picked, I think it was actually during the camp sequence. But Sully's like, I act scary, Mike, but most of the time I'm terrified. It just shows, like, his vulnerability and that he's not always this...
Confident over cocky jock, yeah.
I think my favorite scene is when they go to Monsters, Inc.
I put the same one.
Yep, and it's kind of the first time Sully and Mike bond.
And the whole team kind of bond together.
Because they show them, like, scares can look all...
Shapes and sizes, and,
They don't have to be these big, horrifying creatures. They can be any kind, and people can kind of use their abilities.
Right.
So I did like that.
All right. Well, I don't have anything else for this movie.
Neither do I. All right, so now we move to Inside Out.
So Inside Out was released in 2015. The first of 2 movies released this year. The second being The Good Dinosaur.
Right.
It was rated PG and it had a runtime of 1 hour and 35 minutes.
Box office, it was $857 million worldwide.
And it has a Rotten Tomatoes score of 98%, Metacritic score of 94 out of 100, and Cinema score of A.
Okay, so summary of Inside Out. When 11-year-old Riley moves to a new city, her emotions team up to help her through the transition. Joy, fear, anger, disgust, and sadness work together. But when joy and sadness get lost, they must journey through unfamiliar places to get back home.
Alright, I gotta be completely honest. I watched this movie 8 hours ago.
Did you?
Yeah.
I thought you had finished it.
I lied.
Oh.
I lied because I couldn't bring myself to watch it.
Is that why you were panicking when I mentioned if we should talk about it?
Yes, because I had nothing. I had nothing written down. I had no notes. I was like, I haven't watched it. So I watched it last night at about 12 to 1 in the morning.
Okay.
So I also have some background about this movie as well, because it's kind of interesting how it all came together. So, you mentioned the box office was really high. Mm-hmm. It was actually the highest opening for an original title at that time.
Okay.
The movie was being storyboarded and pre-production for almost 2 to 3 years before they actually started working on it. And they had 7 different versions of the movie before it went to production. Pete Docter was, I believe, director and screenwriter, or involved in both facets of there. Mm-hmm. And normally in animation, it's a very male-dominated field, but for this specific movie, he brought in half the story crew to be women, so that would have more diverse output and views about the story.
Okay.
And he actually almost resigned from the film because he didn't feel like it was coming together, because originally they had joy and fear being the 2 that go together on this journey. And while he was thinking about how he was going to leave this film, he was like, we should make it sadness, because you need sadness to have connections. So they replaced fear with sadness, and then it all came together. The other thing I want to mention is that this movie was nominated for 21 original screenplay, 15 Best Picture, and 40 Best Animated Feature nominations for over 50 different organizations.
That's crazy.
Which is insane.
Yeah.
And for the Oscars, it ended up winning Best Original Screenplay. Oh no, it was nominated for Best Original Screenplay, lost to Spotlight. I can see why it won, but it did win Best Animated Film. And it's honestly a little surprising to me that this wasn't nominated for Best Feature.
Yeah, that is. That is interesting.
I also want to point out that Michael Giacchino, I learned how to pronounce his name.
There you go.
I butchered it so many times. Michael Giacchino did the music for this movie.
Okay.
And I have found that he tends to be my favorite sound and orchestrator for Pixar movies, based on the ones that he's done.
So, the first thing I noticed, like, as soon as I watched it, I couldn't remember where they lived, because I've only seen this movie once. And I said, Riley's dad looks like your typical Midwest dad. They must be somewhere in the Midwest. And then you learn it's Minnesota, and I was like, okay, I was right.
He does look like a typical Midwest dad. Also, I don't know if you know this, but he is voiced by the captain.
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, and if we just talk about really quick the cast of this movie.
Great cast.
You got a really good cast. I mean, you got Amy Poehler, Bill Hader, Mindy Kaling.
Phyllis Smith.
Mm-hmm. It's a good cast.
Yeah.
And it's good. I think the thing I liked is that each character, or each actor or actress really matched their character they played.
Oh, I thought Phyllis Smith, also known as Phyllis from The Office, I thought she did an amazing job.
Yeah.
Like, I loved her performance. Yeah. I thought it was so perfect.
Yeah, it was, honestly. What was your first thought or note?
So my first thought is that I've been dreading watching this.
Yeah.
Because the movie had such a profound impact on me that me and Hannah saw this in theaters together. Yeah. I have never cried harder in a movie theater in my entire life. I even own this. I own this movie. You got it for me on DVD, and I haven't watched it because I just, like, wasn't mentally prepared to be as emotionally drained as it was to me the first time. So I said, please don't make me cry as hard. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. I think concept-wise, this could be Pixar's strongest idea for a movie.
So this is what I said. I said, this movie feels so Pixar. Since we finished Toy Story 3, I haven't felt like a movie felt like, that original Pixar creativity, and you're just wowed by it. This is the first time in a lot of these movies that I felt that inspiration and creativity that I feel like we had been missing for a while.
And I think it's a really risky idea to make a whole movie just solely based on emotion and feelings.
Well, I mentioned, like, how long it took to get to the one story they liked, because they were consulting child psychologists, they were consulting, all sorts of people to try to figure out the best way to portray this idea and these things, and it could have gone horribly wrong, but it worked so well.
Yeah, I think this is a movie where the A and B plot both work really well.
I agree.
Separately and intertwined together. And I don't know what it says about me, but I related the most to Sadness.
Yeah, same. Same. But my quote I picked is from Sadness.
Yeah. But I'm like, where am I at in my life where that's where I relate the most to?
And the humor worked so well in this movie.
Yeah, it did.
There was so many little gags that I loved, and there wasn't anything that I was like, this is awful. Normally, I mean, some of the Pixar movies, like, the humor's good, but there's, a few things here and there, and I'm like, meh.
Yeah.
I don't really care for this. But, like, I didn't really have anything that I was like, I don't care for this.
Yeah, one of the scenes that I really liked the humor in, it was at the beginning, it was a dinner scene.
And
it was showing each member's internal emotions, and the husband's like, oh, she's looking at us. What did she say?
We weren't paying attention. Yeah, I really liked the dinner scene. I wrote down about that.
So John Ratzenberger, again, has a small role. He plays Fritz. It's one of the mind workers when Joy and Sadness are out on their adventure.
In the train? Is that?
I believe so.
Okay.
It's really interesting to see how this movie, like, goes about portraying mental health and emotions.
I think this is maybe the best portrayal of mental health in children in a movie I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And it's still considered, this movie was rated in 2017, I think it was the 7th best movie of the 21st century at that time. Or one of the best films of that decade. And I think why I still cried a ton at the end again. I was like, I knew it was going to happen. Yeah. But I think why it resonates so hard is because it's like, I wish there would have been a movie like this when we were that age, because it basically is like an affirmation that, like, you don't have to be happy all the time. Like, it's okay to feel like wrong or to feel sad or to not feel right.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I said, like, not everything in life is happy. I like the idea of having the sad memories be the ones that can turn into happy ones.
I like that they portray sadness as necessary, and Joyce has to learn that you need sadness to be able to be empathetic and to understand and sympathize with other people's points of views. Like how she helps Bing Bong.
I really like the idea, too, of the islands.
I do, too.
Of having, like, those interests or connections, and sort of the idea that when you're depressed or stuff like that, those connections can kind of disappear and go away.
Right, like you lose parts of yourself.
Right, and so I like that concept of having them, like, actually falling and actually, like, crumbling apart.
This also kind of felt like a Finding Nemo-esque journey in a way, where you have little segments in different worlds or different rooms. Like, I love that abstract art room where they're just, like, deteriorating, and that's, like, a fun way that you could use the medium in, like, different ways, because, you know, they go 2D, they, like, turn to, like, a Picasso-esque painting.
Yeah, I really like that as
and
well.
I liked the dream world, studios, like, it's like a movie plot.
Yeah. I actually really like that they ended up going with joy and sadness together.
I think it's a great combination.
It's interesting to see the balance at the end between the emotions.
Right, that they're able to combine together to create positive, you know, experiences.
And, like, joy realizing sadness is what made Riley's core memories possible.
Right.
I always like that when she goes back and she sees, like, all the moments that were core memories, the happy ones, came from sad times.
Yeah. I also really liked the designs of the emotions.
Yeah.
Just the look of them. I thought it was really interesting. Joy's design was really good, I thought.
Yeah. No, I would agree with that.
I both, like, love and hate Bing Bong.
Yeah.
Because it's, like, it's such a realistic... I don't really think I ever had an imaginary friend.
Not really. I mean, I think when we, like...
But also because we're siblings, like, you know, multiple, so...
I mean, I feel like we would make up
stories,
stuff,
you know, and characters, but I didn't really have, like, a specific imaginary friend, but I thought it was, like, really realistic. As you go through life, you have to leave these things behind, and, you know, you forget things, and you know, grow out of certain things.
It sort of reminded me of when we talked about Toy Story, like, what happens with the toys that are forgotten. It's sort of like what happens with those memories and things like that when you're no longer thinking about them.
Right.
So I did enjoy that concept as well.
I also like at the very end that there's the tragic vampire romance island.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, oh, that's great.
I just think there's a lot that this movie does really well.
And I think the music's a big part of it. Because there's, like, something about the piano... leitmotif that plays a couple times throughout the movie. There's a scene early on where she's playing that ice skating scene, and she's just skating, and it's just piano, and I got teared up just watching that. That is such a, like, a poignant scene, just the way they're able to convey emotion with just the music and the visual, and there's no dialogue, which we know Pixar can do really well, but I thought it was done really well in multiple parts of this movie.
I mean, I really like the side characters. I think they had strong side characters.
I agree.
And I would argue that it's maybe Pixar's most important message.
I think so.
In terms of, like, what the message from the movie is for kids.
But yeah, I think it's a very important film in the way it deals with the human spirit and human condition and the way children a lot of times don't understand how to deal with things like that, because it's not something you can really understand at that age, and just, like, coming to terms with different things.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. And like you said, like, it was something that I wished we could have had when we were younger, because they didn't make any movies like that. And they still, I mean, I think Inside Out was such a groundbreaking film, because
I think so.
It was the first time they really portrayed a child and made it to me feel real.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times when they try to do, like, the mental health with kids, it's not portrayed right,
or it feels like way over the top, too dramatic,
or it's trying to be, like, too protective, and it doesn't get enough into it. I think this one has a good balance.
This is just a simple story of she just wants to go home because she misses home and she misses her friends, and it's, you know, that's the story of the mental health issues, is because of that. It's not some crazy over the top thing. It's just, like, a really simple story that uses that to its advantage.
Right. Are you ready to get into characters? Okay, so you can go with favorite character first this time.
I picked Joy.
Okay.
I was between Joy and Sadness, but I just think Joy is... I like how much she learns throughout the movie, just the way she's able to learn and grow and understand the necessity of other emotions, because in the beginning she's clearly like, I'm the one that needs to be in control of everything. I make her happy and she needs to be happy. She goes through this discovery to come to the realization that you need the bonds and you need to feel other emotions to be able to grow and to live.
I actually went the other way. I did Sadness.
Okay.
I was with you. I was between Joy and Sadness. But for me, like, her humor was so good. She had so many good humor moments.
The deadpan, dry humor works so well.
But also, I like that she finally got a chance to step up and to kind of at the end be the hero. And I do like showing that Sadness isn't the worst thing. Like, people
Right.
always think of it as such a bad thing. I think it's a good thing to have.
Yeah.
So I did like that.
Oh my God, I'm tearing up just thinking
I
about
know.
my favorite scene is the end when Sadness and Joy
Yeah.
like starting to cry just thinking about it, where they come together to help her,
Yeah.
overcome this depression. Basically depression visualized by like the board going gray, and they're unable to affect her because she can't feel anything. And they're together are able to fix things. There's such little dialogue and like great music, and it's just
Yeah, I wrote the same thing.
Yeah.
They just share this look, and you don't need any words to understand what's happening. And then when they start to go into that montage of sad moments, but also the ones turning into happy moments.
turning into happy moments.
There was a quote, I think it was Joy said, she said, "We can't make Riley feel anything."
Mm-hmm.
Just sort of that realization that she's like numb.
Yeah.
And that they literally can't get any sort of emotion out of her. And that's sort of Joy realizing that maybe it doesn't need to be happy all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my favorite quote was a Sadness quote, and she says, "Crying helps me slow down and obsess over the weight of life's problems." And I was like, this is very relevant to today, because that's just about,
Yeah.
how I feel about 2020.
That was my other favorite quote, too. I had that one written down, but I was like, I relate very much to that.
I was just dreading this movie, because it's a great movie, and it's also a movie I don't think I need to watch that often, just because it's such an emotionally draining experience, because it makes you feel so much.
Yeah. No, I agree. I finished this movie and I was like, I can't watch another Pixar movie. I gave myself like a week or two, because I was like, it is draining. It's such a good movie, but at the same time it's, I don't know, you sit there and you watch it and you can't not like think about a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, that's why I lied and said I had already watched it, because I couldn't do it. I was like, I'm not ready.
You even texted me and you were like, I cried, but not as much as the first time.
Well, because I knew we were going to watch The Good Dinosaur, and I didn't want you to know that I was going to be going out of order.
Liar!
I'm a liar. Because we've been trying to watch them in order, but we were going to watch The Good Dinosaur, so I just said, I haven't watched it.
I'll allow it.
Or, I have watched it, but I secretly had not watched it.
Alright, so, Good Dinosaur.
The Good Dinosaur was released in 2015.
Mm-hmm.
It has a runtime of 1 hour and 33 minutes and is rated PG. At this point, one of like 2 or 3 Pixar movies that is rated PG.
Box office, it was 332 million worldwide.
Oh, that's it. Okay.
Oh, yeah, that's it.
So, The Good Dinosaur has a 76% on Rotten Tomato. It has a Metacritic score of 66 out of 100 and a cinema score of A. We didn't mention this for the past several movies we've talked about here, but The Good Dinosaur was not nominated for any awards.
Mm-hmm.
Same with Cars 2. Same with Monsters University. Brave was nominated for Best Animated Film and won Best Animated Film. And Inside Out also won Best Animated Film as well.
Okay, so Disney's Pixar presents a hilarious, heartwarming adventure into the world of dinosaurs when a young Podosaurus,
I think that's right. Sounds right.
named Arlo is swept far from home. He makes an unlikely human friend and learn what he's truly capable of doing.
This movie's bizarre. We watched this together.
Yes.
This is the first movie we've watched together since Toy Story 3.
Mm-hmm. Starting off, like, the first thing I had wrote down is this would probably be the Pixar movie that I've heard the least about.
And you had not seen this
I had never
movie.
seen it, but also I really didn't know anything about it.
I had seen this movie once a couple years ago. I didn't really remember a ton about it. I remembered a few things. We'll get to the drug trip scene later. I specifically remembered that. But my first thought that I wrote down is that this is like a very coming of age story, and like Arlo's the outcast, trying to find his place in the world.
At times, it really felt like Finding Nemo.
I wrote a note about that.
Like, they were trying to recreate Finding Nemo with having him basically losing his family, having to come back to them, and having all these side characters helping him get back.
Found the note that I wrote down, because I was going to say I noticed that, but I don't think they were There was one segment I liked,
Mm-hmm.
specifically with the T-Rexes.
Yes.
I liked the T-Rex segment, but I didn't really care for a lot of those segments.
I think for me the biggest problem was in the middle. Like I was just so bored.
Yeah, I think like I don't know, part of it it's just like it doesn't feel all connected really.
It's very disjointed.
It's very disjointed because parts of it are very like non-verbal, kind of like Wall-E, but it doesn't really always work. There's like some good family dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
Like his father, like his parents want what's best for him, but then his father like pushes him. He's angry and upset, and he's like, "You didn't murder this small child. So we need to go get him now."
Yeah.
And like I'm gonna push you too hard, and then I'm gonna be like sad, like I'll be like, "Oh God, what have I done?" Kind of like Gil and Finding Nemo.
Right. But I understand what the dad's trying to do. Like, he's scared for his son's safety because he's smaller and he wants him to be able to, at the end of the day, like, protect himself and his family.
Right.
I just think he could have gone about it differently.
Yeah, because I liked that little firefly scene with them. Like, that was nice.
Where they're running.
But then he immediately was like, oh no,
And I knew the dad was going to die.
I had remembered that the dad dies. And I think another problem this movie has is that the humor is all over the place. Some of it is really funny. Some of the dry humor really works, like with the animal collector.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked that scene a lot.
I said that when the humor's on, it really works. The issue is that it misses the mark a lot of the time.
Yeah,
it didn't feel like it was on very much.
There's some weird stuff going on.
Yeah, I did like the nature animation.
It looked nice.
It looked good.
And also the idea of the story is interesting too. Like, what if the dinosaurs didn't get hit? You know, the Earth didn't get hit by a comet, or the dinosaurs didn't go extinct.
Yeah, the concept's really creative. I think. I just think that it didn't get executed well. I'm gonna just say John Ratzenberger played Earl. I think he was one of the villain, like
the Velociraptor.
Yeah, kind of a side character
with the T-Rex scene. I think in that group.
So
let's talk about that weird drug scene.
Yeah.
So they eat some like
berries or
I think they were like fruits, some fermented fruits. So they're basically like drunk / like
on drugs.
On drugs. And here's the thing, things like that can work, but that was just so short that I feel like they didn't make it work. Because you've got a movie like Dumbo, where you've got like the pink elephant scene, and that's like basically the creator, like the animators were like just on acid while doing it. Or you've got something like 21 Jump Street, where they're all over the place and you're going through like, here's the steps,
like the stages,
and like that works really well because of how long it is. But this one I was just like, it's just too short, and it just like is too weird to work. I remember when we were watching it, we were just like, I'm sorry, what?
The one thing I did like was Arlo in kind of his like PTSD.
I agree. I liked Arlo as a character.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting because every time it would like thunderstorm, he would flash back to his dad's death.
Right.
So I liked them doing that. I also liked, I don't know, I had a couple issues with just like the plot and the story and how the pace of the movie.
There's also some like weird sound mixing stuff. Like it just, like I felt like we kept having to adjust the volume a lot.
And because we kept having to turn it down and turn it up.
Yeah.
It was really gory.
It was very violent.
I was not expecting that.
And it's rated PG, so that's probably why I got a PG rating. But yeah, it's like surprisingly violent. Like we talked about that a bit. Like we were like, oh my gosh.
I was
like,
definitely surprised at points.
Yeah. Like there's a lot, and we didn't really talk about like Spot as a character.
He's just not, there's not much there.
Yeah, I just like, you can do like Wall-E. You can do a mostly silent character, and we know Pixar can do that well. I just like, I didn't really have any attachment to him. Like at the end, the emotional. I just did air quotes because you can't see me.
Right.
The emotional scene where like where Arlo's like, no, this is your family. Does the circle around them, and I'm like, I know this is supposed to be the emotional moment, but I don't necessarily care.
So actually, do you have any more notes? Because
that's all I have.
Okay. So, interesting enough, the scene you just described was my favorite scene.
Okay.
For a different reason.
Okay.
I didn't feel emotion during the scene much, but I did really like what they did with the music there. And I also like that they were able to portray a scene with pretty much no words.
I was going to say that they did, I think it's done well. I just didn't have any emotional attachment, so I just didn't feel like it landed for me.
I guess the reason it was my favorite scene is because you could you could sense what was happening and understand the whole story without having to get words spoken to you.
Yeah.
You could understand what was going to happen. So I did like that.
So my favorite scene is also another moment where there's really not a lot of dialogue. It's kind of a short scene. It's where Arlo's throwing Spot, like, up into the clouds. Mm-hmm. Because, like, I felt like that was one of the only times I could see, like, the emotion with both of them. Like, and also the visually, it looked really nice. It was just, like, a nice little moment of them, like, kind of bonding.
Right.
And I really liked that. And also, in part with that, also the Firefly scene with his dad. I really liked the visuals with that as well.
My favorite quote, it was during the guy who was the animal collector.
One of my quote is also from the animal collector.
I got down to 2, but the one I picked is, "This is Dreamcatcher who protects me from unrealistic goals."
It's actually Dream Crusher.
Oh, Dream Crusher.
Because that is the exact quote I picked as well.
The other one I liked when he's, like, describing all the people and he goes, "This is..."
I think it's Debbie.
Debbie, and it's just silence.
And it's just silence, yeah.
That was the humor that worked for me.
You're better than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really liked, that was also my quote as well.
Yeah.
And we skipped favorite character.
Yeah, I picked Arlo.
I picked Arlo as well.
I think to me, he was an interesting character in that he, like, I don't know, he never really fit in with his family.
Yeah, he was the outcast of the
family. He always
wanted
to put his print on the wall they had.
Right.
He wanted to, like, fit in that aspect, and, you know, he deals with his father's death and feeling like he's not capable enough, and it's interesting to see. I even noticed at the end, I was like, he actually looks, like, physically, like, bigger.
I was gonna say, he looked taller, and I don't know how long. I would assume it's at least a couple weeks between, because I'm sure he flew pretty far down the river, you know, in the storm.
Yeah.
But yeah, it definitely seems like I guess I will say at the end it felt like he had been on a journey.
Right.
I didn't necessarily like the journey, but it felt like he learned and grew a lot through that experience.
Right.
I think that's why I really liked that T-Rex, the wrangling stuff, because it felt like that was the one time when they, like, he fit in, and also they, like, he learned a lot from them.
Right. Yeah, so that's Good Dinosaur.
And I don't I guess, I don't really know if there's, like, a specific chase scene in this movie.
I mean, technically there was, like, moments that could
there
be
was, like,
considered
there's not really one near the end. I guess Arlo's chasing the creepy pterodactyl guys, and they're chasing the animals, the rodeo T-Rex men, but played by the good old Sam Elliott.
Yep.
I'm like, that sounds like Sam Elliott, and you're like, yeah, it's Sam Elliott. I'm like, okay.
Alright, well, that was the Good Dinosaur. I've been waiting to do that all the time.
The Good Dinosaur.
Felt the cough.
Okay,
Felt the
so
wee tickle in my throat.
Little tickle?
Okay, we're good.
Now I'm thinking about Harry Potter erotica again.
Yeah, but I'm thinking about Shawn Mendes and his butthole. Being
stitched. I hope this stays in.
Okay.
We're talking about Finding Dory.
Yes. Yes, we are. And we're talking about 2016.
We are talking about 2016. What a year.
What a year.
It's weird because 2016 started off as, like, maybe one of the best years of my life, and then it became not my best year of my life.
And then we just snowballed into the next 4 years of struggle.
And here we are.
Still struggling.
So, Finding Dory is rated PG. It's an hour and 37 minutes. And actually now it's your turn. I forgot how the order went.
So, box office, $1 billion.
Is it the first Pixar movie to break into the billions?
It's the first since Toy Story 3 to hit it. So
I forgot about Toy Story 3.
Was in the billions.
Okay.
And there hadn't been one since. And I think it was just over $1 billion.
If any Pixar movie was going to make $1 billion as a sequel, I 100% believe that it's Finding Dory. Because Finding Nemo made a ton of money too.
Yeah.
Wasn't it the highest grossing for a while there?
Let me see. $936 million. So...
And that was a pretty big jump from the previous ones.
Yeah.
So I 100% believe it.
You better believe it.
Because it's true.
Don't call you Shirley for nothing. time you say something and then you laugh at your own joke while I stare at you is just... That's just gonna keep happening. Listeners, because you can't see her, she was leaning over with her hands covering her face. Now she's covering her mouth.
In shame.
In shame and embarrassment.
In disgust.
Just like...
just like Shawn Mendes' butthole. For those of you who don't know, stitches.
No, we're just...
Okay.
No, we're not gonna touch that.
Okay.
We're gonna let that be.
Okay. How to do in the Rotten Tomatoes?
Yeah, let's get back on track. So, Finding Dory had a 94% Rotten Tomatoes score, Metacritic score of 77, and a Cinema score rating.
Okay. So, Dory the Forgetful Blue Tane is living happily in the reef with Nemo and Marlin. What? Did I say something wrong?
Keep reading.
Okay. But when she suddenly remembers she has a family who may be looking for her, the trio sets off on a life-changing adventure to find them.
You live on a diet of saltine and tang. Sorry, that's the first thing that came to mind when you said tang, and I started laughing. I apologize.
So my first note for this movie is I've recently been watching a ton of Schitt's Creek.
Great. Oh, you could...
Yeah, and I heard Dory's dad's voice, and I go, that's Eugene Levy.
Yes.
And then, talk about a superstar cast. Because immediately...
Bill Hader fish.
Yeah, you have Ellen, Diane Keaton, Idris Elba...
Sigourney Weaver,
Bill Hader, Kate McKinnon, Ed O'Neill, Ty Burrell, Allison Janney, Will Dafoe, John Ratzenberger...
Did you say Caitlin Olsen?
No, Caitlin Olsen.
Caitlin Olsen, That's Always Sunny, and The Mick.
Yeah, so it's just a huge cast.
It is probably the most star-studded cast in a Pixar movie, I think. Now, do you think that hindered the movie?
At times, yes.
Just in a general sense, I found I sometimes was taken out of the experience because there were so many voices that I recognized and knew from other things that, like, I was just hearing them as their characters, especially the Modern Family characters. What's the issue here?
Nothing. I was just looking at my battery.
Oh, okay.
I think...
Do you need to plug
agree
it in?
with you. No, we're good.
Okay. Okay.
I think one of the bigger issues with animation movies is when you can't get away from the voice, when you can't separate it from the character.
No, see, here's the thing, because Ellen, at least to me, is a very recognizable voice, but in Finding Nemo, I had no issues believing her as Dory.
Yeah, that's a case where it works. I think, going back to what you said, is there was just so many voices I recognized that every character I was like, oh, that's this person, and it took away from the plot for me.
Yeah. So my first comment was that we saw this in theaters when it came out. I vaguely remember that experience.
Yeah.
But what I wrote down was I remember it not being as good as the first one, but I remember liking it. And that was what I had remembered about it. And then my next comment was immediately that this fish is obviously Bill Hader. I heard it and I was like, that's Bill Hader.
Just side note, John Ratzenberger plays a character named Bill. It's a crab.
So I really liked that they kept that first part where her and Marlin meet.
Yeah.
I liked that they incorporated that into her story. So it's nice to see that little scene from the original, and I really liked being able to see that again because it kind of brings you back into that story. Because this is, I think, the longest gap between the original release and a sequel. So it's nice to get a little recap and have that moment.
Can I just say something?
Sure.
I find it interesting. We'll talk about Cars 3 next. But I find it interesting. I remember watching this movie and liking it. When I watched it this time, I had a hard time getting through it.
I felt like I couldn't connect to it.
Yeah.
And it's weird because I should like it. I love, I make a note that I love Marlin as a character. But I didn't write a lot of notes, maybe the least amount of notes I'd taken in a couple movies. I don't know, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it that I dislike. It's not like a Cars 2 scenario where I hate the movie because it sucks. I don't know if it's
the scenario because they're in like an aquarium. I don't know if it's the characters, but I just didn't really have an emotional connection and attachment.
Yeah. I think for me, the story just didn't move along well. It was like slow at times, or it just felt really chaotic. And I also felt like the side characters were not anywhere near as strong as all the characters in the tank in the first movie.
I really miss those characters.
I did like the nod to them at the end,
I like that we got them even for 10 seconds.
where they're just still in the bags, just in the water. But I had a hard time with the side characters. I had a hard time with the plot. There was just a lot of things that I mean, it took me 3 or 4 days to get through this movie.
I know you told me that. I watched this in one day. I know you had said, though, that it took you a couple days to get through it. I'm not sure what it is, because there's nothing wrong with Dory in this movie. Dory's fine. I like her as a character.
At times what bothers me is Marlon. And I think he should sympathize more than anyone because he understands what it's like to lose someone.
Right.
And to want to so badly get him back. And he was just rude the whole movie. He wasn't really sympathetic towards Dory until the end.
He does come around, yeah. And like Nemo, I don't feel like got to do anything this movie.
Nemo was really just a
he was
side
just
plot.
kind of there. I don't know if it's just because it's the aquarium, the scenario. I missed the feeling of adventure.
Yeah.
That the first movie brought, because that I think is still Pixar's best adventure movie.
I would agree.
In terms of the scope and the scale.
Do you think it was anything to do with it just being in one setting? Because, Finding Nemo takes place in so many different areas and so many different environments.
I don't think so, because we had the tank and we had all those characters just in the tank, and I liked all that stuff.
I think what I miss is, for me, Finding Nemo had maybe the strongest group of side characters, where I think I did pick a side character over main characters for my favorite character, and I missed having really strong side characters. I think that side characters really can help your plot and move along the story, and with this one, they were just going from side character to side character, and I just didn't feel a connection to any of them, really.
Yeah, I think that's...
my favorite thing or side character, I guess, was literally the Sigourney Weaver's voice.
I wrote down I loved that Sigourney Weaver is just her talking over a loudspeaker.
And honestly, that was one of my favorite things. They kept calling back to Sigourney Weaver. I thought that was really smart. But I also felt like the humor in this movie, besides that, it just wasn't great.
The humor was a little off.
Yeah.
Dory was so funny in Finding Nemo. Everything she did. And I don't know if the material just wasn't there. Because, like, Ellen, aside everything, going on right now with her, is funny.
I think to me, Dory, out of any side characters, is like one of the top 3 that I think deserves to have her own movie.
100% agree
based
with
off
that.
their first movie. But I just felt like the execution wasn't there. In the way that Finding Nemo was able to do it, I feel like it wasn't there. And to be honest, it's one of my least favorite Pixar sequels.
I kind of feel the same way. Cars 2 is by far the worst Pixar sequel.
I don't count Pixar.
I don't think anything can go lower than that. Yeah. I think that's a bar that cannot be lowered any more than it already is. And it's weird because I really liked the beginning. I liked all the stuff, back in the coral reef and her remembering her parents and them starting that journey. And I liked that aspect, and it started strong, but as soon as we got to the aquarium, I think you're right. I think the pacing got so slow, and we kept jumping between, Marlin and Nemo and Dory and the octopus whose name I don't remember right now.
I struggled. Really, looking at my notes, I really only wrote like 4 or 5 notes the whole movie.
I told you, my last note was, I think this is the most middle of the road Pixar movie.
I'm ready to get into...
Yeah, I'm
I don't really have much else to say, to be honest.
I really don't either.
So I would say my favorite character was Dory.
I picked Dory as well.
I think she obviously had the storyline. It was all about her.
She was the main character, and not in the way... It's interesting, because in Finding Nemo, Marlin is clearly the main character, but Dory is the companion and, you know, she's right there with him. Whereas in this movie, it was just Dory.
Mm-hmm.
And Marlon wasn't in Dory's role in this
No.
movie.
Yeah,
It was
you're right.
just a large cast of supporting characters. So
Yeah.
it was interesting to see that dynamic shift.
Yeah. My favorite line, I went for comedy this time.
I did too.
So Marlin and Nemo are like with Dory in a tank and they're all the blue fish and Dory's looking for her parents and Marlin's like, she should just pick two and go. And I was like, that's so funny.
I also went for comedy as well in this one. It's when they're driving the car and
Mm-hmm.
a octopus, Ed O'Neill octopus, whose name again I can't remember, he just says, "Suck it, bipeds." And I was like, all right, that got me a little
Yeah.
chuckle. So I was like, that.
Yeah, I felt like scene, I also went comedy. It's when the truck's crashing into the water and they're playing What a Wonderful World. You hear Sigourney Weaver talking in the background, and then there's the food chain with the fish eating each other and then just like throwing each other back up.
It was definitely a surreal moment in that movie. It was very cool. I liked it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. It's a good scene. So scene wise, I actually did go for serious. It's specifically because of the music. It's when she finally meets up with Marlin and Nemo, and they have that kind of conversation, and there's that build up and swell of that Finding Nemo main theme, and I just really liked that moment specifically. I thought it was a good character moment between them.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I had high expectations for it.
Yeah, and
Which-
unfortunately it
Didn't meet that.
flopped.
Yeah.
I apologize. That was a bad pun. That's for you. I did it for you.
It was okay. Not great. Not bad. Just average.
Okay. I'll let it wash away. That one was bad. I'll stop now.
We should just stop.
Why don't you?
The podcast is done.
Why don't you?
What do you want me to do?
She so.
No.
Okay, I'm gonna stop now.
No, stop. We would like to thank Joseph McDade for our intro music. He provides free music available for all kinds of creative use. The song that we used is called Sunrise Expedition, and you can find it and his other music on his website, josephmcdade.com. If you would like to find us on social media, you can follow us on Instagram by searching Research, Rank, Repeat.